All right, so we're on page, I think, let's see what page it is. It's page 1257. 1257, page 1257.
1257.
That's right, 1257. All the way to the end of the Sefer. So it's chapter 6. We're in the middle of Perek Vav, chapter 6. We did the first few verses, and we did them basically in depth, but we missed a few things, as I said last week. I just wanted to cover a few of the interesting details that we missed. There's just so much. The truth is, every layer, then there's another layer, there's another medrash, there's another something. So, but whatever we cover, we'll do the best we can, and we'll see a little bit more. And I guess the main thrust is for us to realize, as we were just saying, is that this is an incredible story happening on many layers. And that's what's important for us when we read the story, not to just read it as a superficial story, but rather to realize constantly that we do have to look deeper. And that everything that happens is happening on different layers and also has so much meaning and is so specific and so exact. Both the players, the timing, the place, everything is working together to cause what happens next. So it's important to keep that perspective because it's actually a fascinating story in and of itself, even without all of that. So it's important for us because, as we said also, that the Megillah is our life. And everything that happens in the Megillah is the way we perceive our life. Our life is also seemingly a lot of random, so to speak, different things that we experience, different people that we meet, different places that we go. And it's only many times, it's only after many years, and we reflect and we look back, do we realize how Hashem took us on this journey to get to this place, and it would have only happened if everything worked together to make that happen. So that's why it's also very, very important for us to remember that. So let's see a little bit more of those details, as we said. So a few of the things, as we said, that we missed last week. So we were reading last week about this. This is a very, very special chapter. This chapter, Perek Vav, is the chapter of the transformation, should we say. This is where we can finally start to see that Haman, although he seems on top of the world, is going to have his downfall. So it's page 1257. Yeah, 1257. So as we saw last week, we saw many different things that happened, and Haman had come to Achashverosh with the intention of convincing Achashverosh that he should hang Mordechai. He had the gallows already in his back, in the front of his courtyard, and it's already built. He was up all night building it. He comes to Achashverosh, it was early morning, it was still the night, so to speak. It was before dawn. As we said, he really wanted to hang Mordechai before Mordechai had a chance to daven and to say Shema. He thought he would be able to manage that. But unbeknownst to him, Achashverosh had also not slept that night. And Achashverosh that night had discovered that they had never rewarded Mordechai, and now he decided he wants to reward Mordechai. But besides that, we explained the other thing that did happen to Achashverosh that night, and that was part of the miracles, if you want to say, that are miracles when we think about them, was that Achashverosh fell into a sort of doze after he had realized and after he decided that, okay, we're going to put something in place, we're going to reward Mordechai. So he felt a little bit more comfortable, and he falls into this fitful sleep, we said, and this malach comes and sort of whacks him, and he falls off the bed a lot of times. And what does he feel? He feels as if Haman is standing over him with a sword ready to kill him. We can say on a natural level that could be also a natural thing. Because he had just come from the party the day before, and who was by the party? Him, Esther, and Haman. So in his mind, being Achashverosh, obviously a royal, in Persia, he's always nervous. He's always on edge. So in his mind, what does he think? Why does Esther invite him to a party with Haman? Must be they're scheming against him. So during the day, those thoughts might have gone through his mind. So you can say, whatever we think about during the day, that's what happens at night. We dream about them. So even on a natural level, we can explain this semi-dream. But the Gemara actually and the Medrashim tell us it wasn't really natural, it was supernatural. The Malach came literally and sort of haunted him to the point where he really didn't let him sleep. And he really felt that Haman was there with the sword ready to kill him. And as he opens his eyes, who's right outside the door? Haman himself. Okay, so we see how Hashem is setting everything exactly at the right moment. So we said all of that last week, but there was just one or two details, like I said, that I wanted to show you. So if you look at its pasuk, sorry, I want to see which pasuk this is. Yes, pasuk beis. So we're going back to verse 2, pasuk beis, just something interesting. Vayimotzei kasuv, and they found written. We went into this at length last time, but also, sorry, one more detail about this. And they found written. Who found written? What does it mean they found written? When you say something was found, it sounds as if you didn't know it was there. But this was documented years before, and it was documented at the command of Achashverosh. So what does it mean they found written? So the Midrashim also tell us that both Achashverosh and Esther and actually even Mordechai were a little bit surprised in what was written. Why? Not Esther, actually, Mordechai more. Why? Because what did they find written? They found written, let's read the pasuk, that what? Asher higid Mordechai, that Mordechai told al Bikson of Seresh, about Bikson and Seresh, Shnei Srisei HaMelech, Mishomer HaSaf, those two guardians of the threshold. And what had they done? They had Bikshu l'shloyach yad b'melech Achashverosh. They were plotting to kill the king, right? So that's what was written there. Whose name is in this pasuk? Who does it say? Who is it attributing the saving of Achashverosh to in this pasuk? Only who? Mordechai. But who also played a role there? Esther. When Mordechai told Esther to tell the king, he actually told her, don't mention my name. I have nothing to do with this. You just say that you overheard, and that at least we'll get rid of them. But Esther, not knowing then why, but Hashem made her do that, when she told Achashverosh, and especially when it was being recorded, she requested that her name not be part of this. Why? Why does it make a difference now? Because as we said, Achashverosh has a little bit of suspicion. Is Esther scheming with Haman? Now he's a little bit worried. If her name would have been there, it would have dimmed it a little bit. And not only would it have dimmed it, he could have said, Esther seems to be part of many plots, so to speak. She's quite in all the secrets of what's happening. It would have made his suspicion on Esther even stronger. Here, because it only exclusively says Mordechai's name, who does he put his attention on? Mordechai. And that's the point here. That's what we want here. We want Achashverosh to honor Mordechai here. So interesting how so many years ago when this was recorded, and so who found it? Interesting. Mordechai, when he heard about it after, he was shocked. Why did she write it that way? Well, now we know, because it was meant to be written that way. Another very interesting thing in this pasuk. This is fascinating. I'll show you that. Look what it says. It says, Al Biksana Vaseresh. Who's Biksana Vaseresh? When you learn them as children, what are their names? Biksan and Seresh. What's Biksana Vaseresh? So very interesting. Remember last week we mentioned the Medrash, how the scribe of the king kept on trying to erase it and the Malach was rewriting it? There's something else that he did. When the scribe of the king wrote it, he wrote Biksan Oy Seresh. Do you see? Do you see that aleph? It was its own word with the vav, that of Seresh. So Biksan Oy Seresh. What's the difference between Biksana V'Seresh or Biksan Oy Seresh? Oy means or. Okay. This means and. Both of them were plotting together. That's a fact. Why did the scribe want to change it? Because by changing it, it would look bad. It would reflect badly on Mordechai. How? Because at the end, they did investigation, right? And they found that they were plotting against the king, both of them. Had Mordechai given over the message, and that's the message Mordechai did give over, had they recorded it in a way, which is what this scribe that was Haman's son wanted to record it, that it was one or the other, what does that show? Either that Mordechai didn't really have the information properly, so it was just lucky in a way almost that he managed to get the message to the king, but it wasn't really an information that he knew 100%, but that's not even so bad. If you say one or the other, and you kill both of them, one of them might be killed innocently. That could also reflect badly on Mordechai. Or the flip side of it is, after they did the investigation, and Achashverosh finds out that they were both in it together, and it says, Biksan Oy Seresh, what that means is, to Achashverosh, he could have a doubt, maybe Mordechai was in on some conspiracy there too. And he didn't want me to know that it was both of them together. And that's why he says one or the other. And that would have been very scary for Achashverosh now when he's reading it and he's on edge because he thinks that there are people who are out to get him. So he doesn't even have one person to trust, which is what, if it says big son of Viseresh, he knows Mordechai gave him the full, accurate information with no self-interest there at all, just to help the king. This actually makes Achashverosh trust Mordechai. A little detail, but miraculously changed by the Malach Gavriel. So the Malach Gavriel took the letters and moved them. So instead of saying Oy, he added the Aleph to the name Big Son. So very interesting. So small details, but you can see the miracles that were actually taking place on that night. Now, there was one more thing that we missed out, and I want to go further. Let me see. Sorry. I wanted just to, before we actually move totally on. Okay, yeah. Do you remember, I think we missed this out. This was a very important one also. So when, over here in the Pasuk, when he's finding out that Mordechai hasn't been rewarded, so what does it say? It says, just see the Pasuk. Let me just see here. It says, in Pasuk Gimel. Vayemer HaMelech ma na'aseh yikar ugdula l'Mordechai. What was done? Remember, we explained these words at length last time, but yikar was like the honor, and gedula is the greatness. So yikar is just like literally just showing honor, and gedula means greatness, which is more permanent. So let's say elevating his position would be gedula, and yikar is just honor. That's in this pasuk. However, when Achashverosh asks Haman for advice and says, what should we do with somebody who has done a favor for the king, right? And we haven't honored him. Let's see, it says in Pasuk Vav, it says, Vayave Haman, Vayemer le HaMelech, right? And Haman came and the king said to him, Ma laseis ba'ish asher HaMelech chafetz bikarai. Right? What should we do for the person who the king wants to bikarai, honor him? It doesn't say godlai, make him greater. Why? Why doesn't Achashverosh share both things to Haman? And yet initially, when he saw that Mordechai wasn't rewarded, he thought both things should happen. So this is very interesting. Remember we said last time that when Haman came in, Achashverosh was very much on edge. What's he doing so early in the morning right outside my door? So this now, when Haman walks in and he's asking him these questions, part of this is, as we said last time, he's trying to trick Haman, right? He wants to deceive Haman to thinking that who does he mean? Who does he want to honor? Haman. Haman falls for it, right? So when he says, what should we do with the person the king wants to honor? Haman thinks, oh, who else does the king want to honor besides for me? Had Achashverosh said, what should we do for the person who the king wants to honor and make great, which means elevate his position, Haman would have known it's not him. Because he's already second in command. There's no higher position he could have except for the king himself. So you see subtle differences, but they show us that there was a lot happening in this conversation, much more than we can see just in the straight psukim. Okay, so these are just small things as we see, but we're going to continue a little bit further. And one last thing before we go on and move to the new things for today. Also, we said last week that when Haman gave this whole idea of how you're going to honor the person, right, with the crown and the clothing and the led in the streets with on the horse and all the beautiful things. So very interesting. It says that what was going through Haman's mind. So Achashverosh hadn't clearly said, it's you, right? He had just asked, what should we do to somebody we want to honor? Haman thought, for sure it's me. But still, Haman's not a fool. And he's very politically savvy. So he knows, just in case it's somebody else. Maybe the king has somebody else in mind. He has to keep that in his scheme of, so to speak, in his idea. So he says to himself, this thing that I want to be done, and we'll see soon really why does he want it so badly, this honor of leading this person through the streets of Shushan, on the horse with all the royal garments, it's fantastic, it's special, but it's temporary. It's there one day, and afterwards, after a while, there'll be new news, as we know in everything in life. New news takes over, and people forget about it. This is not a permanent rise in position, and this is not even a permanent wealth or anything. So that's why Haman gave this advice. Because just in case it wasn't going to be him, at least the other person will not gain so much. That was his cheshbon. But what would he gain if it is him? And this I think we mentioned, but it's an important thing to mention again, that it'll lead on more to today. Because what was Haman's real plot, his plan? Dress him with the royal garments. And that we explained last time, not stam. And actually fascinating, this week is Parashas Tetzaveh. Everything is such hashgacha pratis. One of the clothing that he wanted was a clothing which was, we're not sure if it is from or just similar to the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, which had pomegranates and bells on the bottom. But it does say that Achashverosh had taken a lot of the things from the Beis HaMikdash, so it is even possible that it was, or it was something similar, and part of that was Haman's plan. It wasn't just to be like King Achashverosh, but to be like the most honored person that people look up to, which was the Kohen Gadol, for the Jewish people. So all of this. Anyways, what was Haman's idea? Because he thought, if I am paraded through the town as if I am the king on that one day, that's all I need. I need a few hours of being like the king. Why? Because in those few hours, I can order Mordechai to be killed. Because now I am almost like the king, with the crown, with the royal garments, on the horse, led with like royalty. I can order, somehow manage, I'll somehow arrange it, and Mordechai will be killed. And that's all I need. I just need a few hours. I need 1 minute, really, just to get him the gallows already, just to get him on those gallows. So this was Haman's plan. Obviously, as we know, everything turned around in 1 minute, and all of his plans went from like woe to like one extreme to another. And this is the most incredible part of the chapter. Okay, so let's continue now to see where we were up to. As we said, he came early in the morning, and he thought he's going to get it to see, and then and it describes amazing. In Pasuk Zayin and Ches, he asked Achashverosh, give him the clothes, not just any clothes, as we said, but the clothes that you actually wore already. Not just clothing from your royal, wardrobe, but clothing that you wore. And as we mentioned, clothing that you wore on the day of your coronation, not just any clothing. And interesting, some of the things that the Midrashim tell us that the Psukim don't say, Haman actually said to Achashverosh, I want you to give him one of your daughters as a wife, because he wanted this person to become literally part of the royal family. Let the most honored people of the city lead this person on the horse. Let there be people behind him leading with music. Make this the most amazing parade that people have ever seen. And all these different details the Medrash tells us, and Haman already in his mind was already on that horse riding through the city. But we know what happens. So let's see in Pasuk, let's see which Pasuk it is where he says they actually take him. So Vayemer, that's right, Vayaviu, let's see, V'nasan halavush. And then in Pasuk Yud. So now we come to the transformation Pasuk. But just one thing before we read the Pasuk inside. Achashverosh, as we see, is obviously going to give this honor to Mordechai, not to Haman, right? When Haman realizes that, as we mentioned a little bit last week, there's a little bit of a give and take there. And Haman is not impressed at all. So he starts to get really upset. And he says to Achashverosh, wait a second. We should pay him with money. Money is better than this honor. Achashverosh says, well, give him the money too. Then he says, no, I have a better idea, he says. Why don't we wait and promote him? Why don't we mint a coin in his honor? He wanted to stall for time, because in his mind he wanted Mordechai on those gallows. And once he puts him on the horse, this is not going to be so easy. Once he's paraded and honored through the city. He was stalling for time, and he was hoping for the party, and he thought, Haman in his warped mind also thought that Esther wanted him. He actually thought that Esther had this scheme to elevate him and get rid of Achashverosh. He thought so. So to him it was just a matter of before he was rushing to get Mordechai killed. But now he's stalling a little bit, and everything that he says, Achashverosh says to him, do it also. do it also. But quickly, let's see this pasuk, a very important pasuk, pasuk Yud. Vayomer hamelech laHaman. So the king says to Haman, Maher, hurry up. Kaches halavush ve'es hasus. Take the clothing, the horse, kasher dibarta. Very exact language. What does it mean, kasher dibarta? As you have spoken. Don't detract even a drop. Now that you know it's not for you, you're going to try to cut corners. Achashverosh says, do exactly as you said, with every detail of all the honor and the glory that you wanted. Va'asechein to who? LeMordechai HaYehudi, as we said. Which one? And Haman says, which Mordechai? He says, that Mordechai, the Mordechai, HaYehudi, HaYoshev Bishar HaMelech. Al topel davar mikol asher dibarta. Do not detract even one thing from what you have spoken. And what does Haman do? So he has absolutely zero choice. This pasuk is literally the transformation of everything. Now his whole self is like, oh my gosh, but he has no choice. In pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayikach Haman es halevush ve'es hasos. Vayalbesh es Mordechai. So not only does he have to take the clothing, the most honored clothing, and the horse, as we said, the horse from the day of coronation, the most special horse from the stables, and he himself has to dress Mordechai. This is also something it says, the Midrashim actually describe that it wasn't just Haman on his own. Haman had to do a lot of the menial work, but there was a whole, I don't know how you say, staff of people, like the king would have, dressing Mordechai, giving him all the honor. And what did he have to do? And they rode him through the streets, ha'ir of the city, and Vayikra, and they called out lefanav before him, Kocha ye'asa le'ish, asher hamelech chafetz bikarei. So you shall do for the man whom the king wants to honor. Very interesting. We know that it doesn't say it here. We know the famous medrash that as Haman is leading Mordechai through the city. So who's dressed up? Mordechai, right? He's not dressed up as himself. Actually, the king told him even with the crown. When it was Haman, he didn't want the crown, but Mordechai, he says he could have the crown because Achashverosh is not worried about Mordechai taking over his rulership in the same way that he's worried about Haman. Let him have and as we mentioned last week, also he thought, good, let him be king for a few hours, and then he won't be king forever, because he had this prophecy that somebody from Mordechai, or somebody from Esther and Mordechai, he didn't know exactly how, would be the king, and it was Daryavesh. So it was a true prophecy, but Achashverosh didn't know that. Anyways, very interesting thing. So what happens? As Haman is leading Mordechai through the city, just before he's about to go out, he thinks of an idea. He's very, very embarrassed. And I mean, this is the most embarrassing thing that could happen to him, possibly, really the most embarrassing thing. You're talking about Mordechai, the one who literally was the only one in the entire kingdom who did not bow to him. And now he has to lead him on the horse, right? So he has to be literally like the simple, whatever you want to call it, the guy who's leading the horse with Mordechai sitting there. So he says to Mordechai, maybe you can do me a favor, lessen my embarrassment a little bit, let me wear your clothing. Your clothing. And Mordechai, interestingly enough, says, no problem. You want to wear my clothing? Wear my clothing. Because Haman thinks, at least people, when they see, what will they think? If they don't look strongly enough, they think Mordechai's leading Haman on the horse, not the other way around. Well, what happens? This is why the story unfolds the way it does. As we know, what was Haman's daughter doing looking from the window? She sees whom she thinks is Mordechai, leading a horse with the royal, somebody. Who else could that be except for her father? And that's when she dumps the garbage all over who she thinks is Mordechai. But really, it's her father. How could she make that mistake? Because her father was dressed up like Mordechai. It's very interesting. You see a lot of people dressing up in the Megillah. Also part of our dressing up. So very interesting. So it's just these are small details, but all play a little bit of a role of how it all happened. And I see a little bit of depth over here now. Just want to show you something before we go further. In this pasuk, there's actually a very deep Kabbalistic idea I'll just touch a drop. I'll show you something interesting. It says, Vayikach Haman es halavush ve'es hasos. Do you see? The clothing and the course, right? So if the words es halavush ve'es hasos, the first letters is aleph and then a hey. Do you see? And then it's on the bottom of page 1257, the last line. Es halavush ve'es hasos. So aleph, hey, vav, hey.
That doesn't mean very much to you and me. What is Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey? So Kabbalah, it's actually one of the names of Hashem. It's one of the secret, but one of the names of Hashem that's not used, it's only encoded. Where do we have it first encoded? Bereshis bara Elokim, Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. Es Hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz is also Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey. So, what does that mean? If you take the number, Aleph and Hey and Vav and Hey equals the number 17. One of the beautiful numbers in music. 17 is Toiv, good. When Hashem creates the world, He creates the world in a way where, in truth, it doesn't look like it when you just look at it superficially. And a lot of times when we're experiencing, it doesn't feel this way. But in truth, when we peel away the layers and we reveal the godliness, which is really the source and the root and the essence of everything, we find that the world is good. And the purpose of the world is that it is good, but the purpose is for us to reveal that good. What is that good? That's the godliness, which is within everything. So that's the 17 equals good. Toiv. Toiv in Hebrew is the same numerical value, 17, as this letter, this name of Hashem. But how do you see that? That's very nice in Es HaShamayim ve'es ha'aretz. But what does it have to do with the levush and the sus? So Kabbalistically, again, this is a very Kabbalistic idea, but it says that the levush and the sus is just like Shamayim and Aretz. Why? Because what's a levush? A levush is a garment. And we say that the heavens, it's actually interesting, there's even a pasuk that men say when they put on their talis, Oita Arkesalma, Noita Shamayim Kiyuriya, which means that Hashem sort of wrapped the heavens around the earth. You know, we wrap the talus, so it's wrapping. So the heavens, even in the imagery, the heavens wrap the earth. The heavens symbolize something which is enveloping, which is where godliness is enveloping, you know, and it's magnificent, but it's more like an atmosphere. It's something that you feel externally a little bit. You enter it all equally, you know, it's all there, and you can touch it if you want. If not touch it, but you can feel it, but it's not inside of you. What does the sus represent, on the other hand? And this is a bit stretched, but this is Kabbalah. The sus is like this. A horse is something which travels. Okay, so it travels from one place to another, and that's the idea of a horse, that it's able to convey. In Torah, we have an interesting thing, that when we're talking about the Eibishter creating the world, how did He create the world? You know, we say always with using letters, right? Speech. Speech is the faculty by which we can express what we feel inside to somebody else. Speech conveys. Speech is a transportation. It's a transportation of what's in our mind to somebody else. That's what it is. So it transports. And it's actually, it really, we say that the letters of the Aleph base, so to speak, and the letters by which Hashem created the world, transports, even till today, the energy of Hashem to create the world. So what does the sus represent? The sus represents the Oretz, Hashem's creation of the world, through the language, through the transportation, but it's not transport, it's more conveying. It's more that kind of where the energy, so to speak, goes from Hashem and comes and creates the world. So we see here something very powerful. This pasuk is saying to us, Maher, right? That he should quickly take, you know, in pasuk Yud actually it says, Maher, kach es halavush ve'es asos, right? Hurry up and take this Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey. Achashverosh was talking, but we know that Achashverosh is interchangeable with Hashem, right? In the Megillah, sometimes it's Achashverosh, because in this pasuk, what does it say? It says, Vayomer Hamelech El Haman, right? In pasuk Yud, the king. Who's the king? In this context, we can say it was Hashem. And he says to Haman, which represents the most evil, so to speak, the most concealment possible. But he says, now you're finished. Hurry up, the time has come. Once the time has come, everything will happen very quickly. That everything will change from like black to white. You think you're in charge, in 1 minute it's going to be Mordechai who's in charge. So that's why he tells him, hurry up and take the clothing, take the horse, which means over here, take the heavens, take the earth, reveal the good within everything, because that's what's going to be happening now, whether you like it
or not. And this was obviously against Haman's will, because Haman, all he wanted was to reveal the negativity in the world. And here, he's going to be the instrument to elevate the goodness, because he's going to put Mordechai on the horse. And that's also such a beautiful part of the Megillah, that the ones who are actively bringing about the good are the bad players. Achashverosh, Haman, they're the ones who have to do all the good. Hashem doesn't destroy them. In Mitzrayim, they fell into the ocean. Right into the sea. They all destroyed, they all drowned. Over here, well, Haman does get destroyed afterwards, but Achashverosh, he remains the king. He himself has to change. He himself has to make new decrees. So this is a very, very deep thing. This is where we can see literally that the negativity becomes almost an assisting to something positive. This is the real transformation. This is what the Megillah represents. Okay, so that's the day. Now let's go a little bit more inside, because like we said, see more of the beautiful story. So if you continue, okay, so I'm just continue, sorry, let's see here. Okay, sorry, just one second, and we'll go further. Okay, so now let's go into Pasuk Yud Beis. So now we're on page 1258, and let's see in Pasuk Yud Beis. It's a very beautiful Pasuk. So now, after that whole day, Mordechai's been paraded through the streets, and everything is wonderful. So let's see what the Pasuk tells us. Vayoshav Mordechai el Shar HaMelech. Mordechai returned. It seems like such a nothing Pasuk, and I'm telling you what, when you read it, I would just overlook it, but this pasuk is so incredible. We'll see in a minute why. So Mordechai returns to the gate of the king. The Haman nidchaf el beisai, and Haman was pushed to his house. Avel v'chafoy roish, as we say, despondent, like mourning, and literally, as it says over here, chafoy roish, his head covered, full of garbage, really feeling very low. I want to just read to the end of the parak, and then we're going to go back to understand these psukim. Because what happens then? Vayisaper Haman leZeresh ishtoi ulechol oyavav. So Haman tells Zeresh, his wife, and all of the people who loved him, Eskol asher karahu, everything that happened to him. Vayoimru loy chachama v'Zeresh ishtoi. And those wise men and Zeresh, his wife, says to him, this is one of the beautiful lines in the Megillah that the reader, when they read it with a beautiful song. Imi zera haYehudim, if Mordechai comes from the Jewish people, whom you have begun to fall before him, then it's hopeless. You're not going to be able to stand up to him. You're definitely, for sure, going to fall before him, as we say. They were still speaking, and the officers of the king come, and they hurried to bring Haman to the party, Asher Asa Esther, that Esther made. These psukim seems like a small detail, but let's understand what's happening. This is actually quite incredible. So first of all, Vayoshav Mordechai el Shar HaMelech. This part of the pasuk actually doesn't even seem to fit in, because this is all about Haman, right? Why do we even have to mention Mordechai here? Okay, he was paraded through the streets, but obviously, what does he do? He goes home or whatever. He doesn't play a role, and actually it interrupts. Do you see? Because really it's all about Haman. Haman coming home and Haman getting despondent, and now Haman has to be rushed back to the palace. Mordechai really is not, that half of pasuk shouldn't be there. Maybe in the next parak, but not here. So it says like this. This is really important. What does it mean, Vayoshav? He returned. It doesn't say, very interesting, he returns where? To the gates of the city. So the Gemara says right away, what does it mean he returned to the gates of the city? He returned to the position he was in exactly the same as before he was paraded throughout the city streets in this honorable way. So what does that mean for us to understand really simply? What did Mordechai do? He goes back to the gates, and the truth is technically not even correct, because where did Haman take him from? We said he was in the base medrash. Do you remember? He was learning, and he was getting the children to say Tehillim because they were all worried about the decree. So it's not really physically 100% correct, but it's spiritually correct. And what does it mean? Because before he was in the base medrash, he was sitting at the gates. Why was he sitting at the gates? We know. Because he couldn't come into the city. Why couldn't he come into the city? Because he was dressed in sackcloth and ash. And you can't come to the palace of the king, the gates of the palace. You can't come in with sackcloth and ash. So what does this mean? Mordechai puts back on
sackcloth and ash. He has just been paraded in the streets of the city as the most honored person in the entire country. And now, in seconds, what is he? Sitting there with sackcloth and ash. So first of all, this is the most incredible contrast to Haman. Do you remember we said when Haman left the first party? He left feeling top of the world. He was honored. He thought, there's nobody in the world greater than him. You can see the difference already between Haman and Mordechai. One, whenever something good happens, they feel more arrogant. The other one, when something good happens, they become more humble. Okay, so that's first of all, but much deeper than that. What was going on here? He had just had such an honor. In his mind, Mordechai, we would imagine that he would feel a little bit comforted because he would think, things are changing now, right? Look what the king's doing. Who's he honoring? Me, not Haman. So why should we be worried anymore? We'll manage to annul the decree. We have nothing to worry about anymore. That's what we would imagine Mordechai would be thinking. Mordechai doesn't think anything like that. To Mordechai, Haman, Achashverosh, they don't even play a role. This decree comes from who? Hashem, directly. They are just like the little robots, the puppets over there. He's paraded through the city or not paraded through the city. If the Jews haven't done full tshuva, the decree is still there. And he doesn't know that. He still feels we have to do more tshuva. So to him, it has nothing to do. It literally is like water off the duck's back, literally. It's unbelievable. We can't imagine that. It's what it means is his whole outlook in life. He has what we call that real level of bitachon, where nothing external that happens to him actually affects him in the way that he feels that can play a real role. It's only Hashem. The only one who's in control is Hashem. So that's one very powerful thing that you can see from here. But Mordechai goes back and he sits there and it describes that he puts on the sack and ashcloth. So according to some opinions, now that he's been honored by the king, it's a little bit, it's not the right thing to do. Because it might be, in Achashverosh's eyes, he might look at it very badly. I just honored you and now you're going to look like that? Like, aren't you happy? It could also be, forget Haman, but it could also be interpreted as a certain type of chutzpah to the king. Why is Mordechai doing that? So some people say he put these kind of sack on, but he put nicer garments on top of it. So what was rubbing on his skin was this rough, uncomfortable clothing, showing again that maybe he might have to do things externally because that's what you have to do. But they really don't matter to him. They are not what plays the role. He knows who's really in charge, and that's what matters to Mordechai. So Mordechai is returning himself back exactly to the same position that he was before he was honored. He feels exactly the same, and he is sitting there by the gates, as we can see, Shar HaMelech. But what happens to Haman from this whole story? Okay, so firstly, the pasuk does describe that he was nidchaf el beisai. This is interesting. What does it mean he was pushed home? Who pushed him? So funny. The Midrashim describe different things. So on one level, just on a very simple level, it says, because his daughter had thrown all the garbage on him, you could imagine what he smelled like. So a person who smells like that, if they're walking through the city, people do not want to be, get away. So he's like pushed. Okay. Obviously, in a deeper level, it doesn't necessarily mean he was physically pushed, but he himself felt pushed. He felt pursued. Like that's the, so to speak, if you want to say the imagery we would imagine. That's why he felt himself to be pushed. He felt very uncomfortable now. Now he knew something is not right. And he was worried. He was down. Some people say he was mourning, because part of the story was after his daughter threw the garbage and then she realized her mistake, she committed suicide. She threw herself out of that window and she died. So he was in a state of mourning. So he was really low, and he was going home now and he was going to be facing, his wife and everything. So to him it was like a real feeling of being pushed. Or there's actually even a medrash that says that a malach pushed him home. Keep going. Because you know what Haman could have done now? He could have run away, ran for his life, because the gallows are still standing, and if somebody dares tell the king, he doesn't know what's going to happen. He has to go to this party. He's confused. Maybe he might want to take a little bit of time off. No, now he's being pushed, which means he's a real puppet, so to speak. And there's somebody above making him do everything the way Hashem wants him to do it. It's like almost he has no more choice, in a sense, almost like Parai at the end. So he's being pushed. He gets home. And this is also interesting. So what happens? When he gets home, you see what it says, that he starts to tell them all that happened to him, right? Initially, after the first party, when he gets home, do you remember what it said? He came home. Was Zeresh home? Do you remember? She wasn't. He had to send for her. Remember? Because she had a good social life, his wife. She didn't stay home waiting for him. So she was a nice, she used to, whatever, she was out. But here, she's home. Why are they all waiting at home? So I know this is simple, but just to understand, if we think about the story of how it happens, it's quite beautiful just to see even in the simple level. When Haman had left that morning, right, it was very early in the morning, he was so excited, the gallows were there, this was all their advice, they had all advised him, and he was sure, and they were all sure, that within an hour or two, Mordechai would be hanging on those gallows. So what happens? Haman is going to the palace of the king. His wife is at home, all those friends, the people who he loves officially are there. There's advisors, they're all there. They're waiting eagerly for Haman to return. But what happens? Time goes by. An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by. Haman's not back. And they start to get a little bit worried. So after a while, they just couldn't leave. They were like, what's going on? So some people say, well, they must have heard, because that news would have traveled quickly. So either they heard, that would even scare them more, or they didn't hear and they're waiting, and they're anxiously waiting at home. So you can imagine that when Haman comes home, they're all looking, what happened to you? How did this unfold? Because they don't know the beginning part of the story of what happened when he entered Achashverosh, right? They don't know that. So that's what he shares to them. And he shares it says, Eisach kol asher karahu. Very interesting word. What does karahu mean? Happened to him. Everything is Hashgacha Pratis. This week we read in this Shabbos is called Parsha Zachar, right? Shabbos Zachar. What Zachar? We remember Amalek. What does it say about Amalek? Famous line. Asher karcha baderech. Amalek met the Jewish people, happened to meet, coincidence, met the Jewish people on the way when they were traveling in the desert and started up with them. And then the Jewish people destroyed them, whatever, almost. Didn't fully, ever, but whatever, had a war with them. Karcha is the word for coincidence. It's not a good word in Torah. It's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to say the whole Megillah is. Haman, as we just said with Mordechai goes back to his place. Whose hand does he see in everything? Hashem. Nothing happens by chance. He's honored, he's not honored. It's all Hashem's work. Haman is exactly the opposite extreme. Everything is coincidence. So he's already, even though he's full of garbage on his head, he's just been demeaned and embarrassed in the lowest way, he's already rationalizing everything, figuring it all out. And he says to it's like in his mind even, he already says, this is just a little blip, this is nothing, it's just now, actually it's even better for me, because now that the king rewarded Mordechai, I don't have to worry, because now the king doesn't owe him anything anymore, and now I can tell him to kill Mordechai, because he got his reward. So you see how he twisted, such a twisted logic, but it all comes from this karahu. To him, it's just happening. Somehow this happens, that happens, and I can control the situation if I'll be smart enough. This is a very key thing. So then what happens? So he tells them, and then, it's interesting, look what he says. First of all, when he comes home, who does he see first, it says in the Pasuk? Zeresh Ishtai. And then V'cholei Havav. But then in the other Pasuk it says, V'yemru loi chachamav. First of all, it doesn't say, Oy Havav is lovers, the people who love him. It says, the wise men. Where do wise men come in? Where are they wise from? It didn't say wise men before. It's funny. Before he called them like his good friends, and now they're like his advisors. And also, why is his wife second all of a sudden? It's very interesting. Because when she saw Haman and how down he was, she realized, because she was the one that gave all that advice, she realized, I better be quiet, I'm in trouble now. Oy vavoy. So she's silent, and she lets everybody else speak before her this time. But now also, they're not the people who love him anymore, because we know that in those type of relationships, there's no true love. Why were they his friends? Only because of his
great position, and they thought it would be good for them. Now when they see Haman on his way down, they're not his friends anymore. They don't love him anymore. They never loved him to begin with. So now they're just like his advisors. Okay, advisors. But according to a little bit of a deeper insight, the word chacham does actually mean somebody who is wise. And why are they called wise, with wise advice? Because the truth is that they do see the situation correctly. And what they say to Haman is very wise. Anybody who's willing to admit that they've made a mistake is wise, because wisdom, chokhmah especially, comes from humility. If somebody is humble, they can see things clearly. It's not just about them, and they're not twisted like Haman was. They were able to now withdraw and say, we better make a detour here. Something is wrong. The plan is not working. And what do they advise Haman? Very interesting thing that he doesn't take. Just show you in the deal. We'll see a few details here. He says, you know what? And it's interesting because you would think that they would comfort Haman. Instead, they're making him feel even worse. They're not comforting him at all. But the truth is, in a certain sense, what they're trying to do is give him good advice. And they say to him, if Mordechai is a Jew whom you began to fool, you are not going to be able to. So what should you do? Nafal tipo lefanav. We have a good idea. Fall before him. Just act a little bit humble and beg him. The Jewish people are a compassionate nation. And we know, it was a mistake, but we know that during the time of Shaul, the king Shaul, what happened? When Shaul was supposed to kill Amalek, Haman's great-great-great-grandparents, the king Agag begged for mercy, right? And Shaul had mercy. He wasn't supposed to, and he did. So they say to Haman, if you beg Mordechai, maybe he'll have mercy on you. Fall before him. Haman's not taking that. He's not interested. He does fall, but when it's too late. You remember in the next chapter when he falls on Esther's couch, and then he's really finished. But that's only when it's way too late. But here, the advice they give him is not such bad advice. But he's not willing to listen because he's full of such a hatred and such arrogance, and he cannot see any, so to speak, any hand of God at all. But just to take apart a little bit more, so what do they say to him? In Mizera HaYehudim, Mordechai. What does it mean if he's from the seed of the Yehudim? If he is a Yehudi, and remember we said Yehudi is a big word in the Megillah. Yehudi means if Mordechai is a man who has the humility and the acknowledgement of Hashem, that's what a Yehudi represents, somebody who is Maideh, who acknowledges God, and he acknowledges that who's the one that really led him through the city, it's Hashem, well then you are totally lost. You're taka gonna fall. No question about it. There's no way, no problem, no way up from here. It's only down. And this is actually, they were right. Unfortunately, they were right for Haman. It was unfortunate that they were right. But it says, Oida midabrim. What happened while they were still talking? As they were talking to Haman, what they really wanted was, they said to Haman, you better chop down that big gallows. Because if the king sees those gallows now, you're in trouble. Chop it down and maybe you'll plant it up another day. He wanted to, but he wasn't given a chance. As they were talking, already the king's messengers are coming to take him to the queen. And how was he taken to the queen? In the most demeaning way possible. He looks like, I don't know what he smells like. He's full. He didn't even have a chance to change. I mean, we can't even begin to imagine what this means for Haman. So he's already at a low place. And this is also a very important thing for Esther. When he comes to the party, because he hadn't had a chance to change, he wasn't wearing his idol. He had this idol, whatever, this thing on his neck they used to wear. Do you remember we said that's why Mordechai didn't bow down to him? The first party, when they came together, we said Esther didn't say anything, right? She only said, I want another party. One of the reasons that's given why she didn't ask Achashverosh by the first party, why did she wait for a second party, was because in her mind she said, I don't have a message from Hashem that it's time for me to say anything. This time, when Haman walks in looking the way he does, and with no idol on him, she says, now Hashem is sending me the message that this is the right time, I can ask for mercy. So all of these things, again, playing in to make the story happen, as we can see. So I want to see, just one more, to make sure, and then I wanted to share one more beautiful thing.
Sorry, just want to make sure. Okay, so just that's right. Just one last thing that they were saying to him. Why was so wise? As we said, they were wise. Chachamav. So it says they said to Haman. The language that they used was asher. He says asher hachiloi salin poilafanav loy suchaloi ki nafal ti poilafanav. Right, it's like double. You know, the ones that you started to fall before, you will surely fall before him. Why? Why were they so sure that he was going to fall? Just because this could also be a blip. It's possible. These things happen where things don't go 100% according to plan, but you can get it back on track. Haman's a smart man. Why do they think? So they explained something to Haman. They said, we know the history of the Jewish people, and we know that when Hashem appeared to Yaakov and promised Yaakov, what did he say to Yaakov? He said to him, V'hoya zaracha ka'ofar haaretz, right? That your descendants will be, we translate, as many as the dust of the earth. But there's also other explanations. Ka'afar haaretz means that the Jewish people, literally, as we know, are lots of times like the dust on the earth where everybody steps on them. Wherever we find ourselves, the nations step all over us. Unfortunately. But the next pasuk says, Ufaratz ta'yam v'akedma tzafayna v'negba, right? What does Hashem promise Yaakov? Don't worry, but your children, they will burst forth and they will go in all directions. And also, as he says, they will be like the stars of the heaven. So the Mefarshim explain something interesting. Are we like the dust or are we like the stars? The truth is, the Jewish people are either extreme. We are a nation of extremes. There's no middles. So sometimes we're the dust, and everybody's stepping on us, and we look like we're in the dumps. And, you know, it's over, like, so to speak, and anybody can do what they want to us. But literally, in seconds, if Hashem wants, He can take us from being like the dust of the earth to being like the stars of the sky. And this is what they told Haman. If the destiny of the Jewish people is changing, it's not going to be a slow, gradual change. It's going to go from one extreme to another. And what happens when they are not like the dust? The enemy becomes the dust. So you will now be the one that's going to be stepped on. And they were right. They were 100% right. That's exactly the destiny, and that's how it always works. So here, Haman, as we can see, when he's going to the second party, doesn't feel quite amazing about himself at all. No question about it. So this is really the end of this chapter. I mean, I'm sure I've missed out many more things. I just want to share one more quick thought about just generally, this is generally about Purim, but it ties into the learning of the Megillah that we were doing. Because as we know, as I said, nowadays, you can give a lot of shiurim, but there's so many beautiful books that you can read in English and learn all the medrashim, and they've written it so beautifully now that it's really, and online, I mean, you can hear anything, you know, so it's so magnificent. So in the Gemara, actually, it discusses about Purim, the day of Purim. One of the things that we don't do is we don't say Hallel. You know, it's a very interesting thing, and it's funny. It's a miracle. You would think of all days, Purim, Hallel. Where's the Hallel on Purim? So it says, like, there's a few reasons why we don't say Hallel on Purim, and it's its own discussion. One of the reasons is a miracle that happened out of the land of Israel. One of the reasons is that we were still, even after the whole story, we were still living in Persia and we were under the reign of Achashverosh. We weren't totally free. But there's a middle reason, and the middle reason that's given is a person called Reb Nachman, and he says that Kriyasa zu Hilula. Hilela, you say. The Kriya, the reading of the Megillah, that is the Hallel. So he says we do have Hallel, a different form of Hallel. And what is the Hallel? The Hallel is the Megillah. What does it mean? So what does that mean? It means like this. That Hallel is said for what kind of miracles? Open miracles. Because the truth is, everything really, in a certain sense, is a miracle, if you look at it, right? We say, even in davening, we say, Al nisecha shebechol yoyim imanu, right? On the miracles, we thank, right, in Moedim, we say, thank you, Hashem, for the miracles that happen throughout the day, every day for us. So the truth is, nature is also miraculous. But what's the difference between nature and miracles? Yeah, miracles is obviously the hands of God, and nature, Hashem is camouflaged, He's covered up.
In nature and in miracle, if you want to say in these categories, it's not really two categories. Really, we can divide it into three. There's nature, normal life. There's open miracles like the splitting of the sea. I mean, that's obviously God. Nobody else can do that. And then there's a middle category. That's the story of Purim. Purim is a middle category because Purim seems natural on one level, but as we said, as soon as you start learning the story, you realize it's not natural. That's not how life works. People are not in the right place, always at the right time. We see the miracles as you learn the Megillah. So what happens? Purim is a miracle which is clothed in nature, so to speak, camouflaged by nature, but it's still a miracle. And that's why there's a question, Hallel or no Hallel? So from one aspect you can say yes, Hallel. From another aspect you could say no Hallel. So Reb Nachman says, I'll tell you, the way that Hallel does take place on Purim is only one way. If you learn the Megillah properly, if you read it properly, if you think about it for a minute and you start to see the hand of Hashem, that becomes the Hallel. So the Hallel can be said, not as Hallel, but as the reading of the Megillah, that form. In other words, reading of the Megillah reveals the miracle. It's the reading of the Megillah that gives us the essence of Purim. And that's why it's so essential for us to learn the Megillah, because without that we can go into Purim and it could just be a fun day, like, whatever. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, just a nothing day. Exactly, a party. But when you learn the Megillah properly, as Reb Nachman says, you start to realize that everything was the hand of Hashem, just like Mordechai realized and Esther realized. And that really transfers to our life, that we start to look at every experience that we have in a whole different way. That yes, nature is nature, and that's true, but even in nature the hand of Hashem is there. It's just that it's not obvious. But once you start thinking about it, it's even, in some ways, nature has an even greater revelation of godliness than miracles do. Because within nature, you have Hashem operating within the boundaries of nature, which means you have the infinite together with the finite, which is something we can't understand, working together hand in hand. Hashem doesn't break nature. He doesn't change things, but he operates within that limitation to make everything happen. And that's so, so, so powerful for us. So this is the real message, one of the many messages of Purim and of the learning of the Megillah. And like I say, the only way to do it is the more insights that we have into the Megillah, the more we can see the hands of Hashem. So we should, yes, see open miracles in every way, Mirz Hashem. And yes, and